Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another thing where I talk about things. This is actually the second take on this video. I ran out of memory card space on my microphone for the first video. It's actually, a while back I was trying to do a bunch of videos, or I was trying to do one video on She-Ra, but then kept deleting it because every time I talked about She-Ra, I felt like I should address the controversy surrounding She-Ra, by which I mean the crappy gender politics that everyone wants to discuss about everything, because that's what the internet seemed to want to do with She-Ra. Every time I went to go talk about it, I'd be like, so I'm watching this show, and everyone would be like, oh my god, let me share my opinion on gender politics. This is because someone on the show staff went on Twitter and then said something crappy about people's genitals or something thereof, and that's just how it is. All of my equipment is like probably over a decade old by now, which is a bit of a laugh. It's been a while since my last video, about half a year now, I guess. Maybe not quite that long, but somewhere in that vicinity. We went through Christmas, and I have been using the exact same cell phone since, I don't know, 2006 or something like that, and my parents finally took pity on me, and for Christmas, bought me a modern phone, so that I could hear people again. It was actually kind of a laugh. I was surprised. I was like, oh my god, is this the audio quality people enjoy in the modern day? Like, this is what it's like? People sound like themselves on the phone. That's weird. So, yeah, this camera that I'm using is like super old. It's like grainy and it records for, you know, the old 25 and whatever. The frames per second that nobody uses anymore with the interlacing and everything. Like, I have to like de-interlace the video. It's all so old. But, you know, let's keep doing this. This is fun. This is fun. So, yeah, what's been going on? Mainly I've been focused on raising my son, looking after my kid. One of the reasons why I've come back and started doing Steve again and posting video and doing things like that is that at this point he's starting to sleep through the entire night. So I am awake anymore. I'm getting enough sleep to feel well rested the following day and not just like pass out tired. Also, I've been seeing the doctor about a thyroid thing. I mentioned like a long time ago that I saw the doctor and they were like, oh, you got a thyroid problem. So they've been changing my meds and trying to figure out where to put me, and that's made me feel more alert. Unfortunately, I've also gained like 20 pounds, but that could also come with getting old, so it's hard to say. I gotta kind of start watching what I eat a little bit more, and you know, but everything's like that. Like, I can't drink like I used to do anymore. If I drink before going to bed, then I'll just wake up the next morning feeling hungover, even if all I had was like 2 beers. So, yeah, you know, getting older. This is one of the things. You have kids, they keep you. It's weird. It's weird to think that adulthood is when things start to crap out. I guess biologically we're supposed to have kids when we're teenagers and able to stay up all night. You know. But that's not how man does things. No, man takes things into his own hands. He defies nature. We don't have children when we're teenagers. No, how would you provide? We do it when we're 30. So, yes. Anyway, though, things have been going good with Miles. Oh, the only reason we're having these videos is partly because Claudia has been a fan of the audio-related things. Also, I've made a joke in the previous one. I'll make this one again. Doing in full scruff today. Haven't really shaved, you know, just in my casual whatevers because, let's be honest, this is YouTube and the visual medium is wasted. You don't turn to anything on YouTube for the visuals anymore. That's dumb. That's expensive for the person making the video. No. We're really just here to listen. So, yes, yeah, Claudia really likes to listen to my Let's Plays and my personal times and things like that. She listens to them while she works, and otherwise, she's been following these podcasts, which is a bit of a laugh. She really likes her murder podcast, and so she's been watching this thing called My Favorite Murder, or listening to, rather. Might be on YouTube, but she would be listening to it there as well. So, yes, anyway, though, My Favorite Murder, it's about murders, and it's funny because for a little while there, she was developing some real anxiety because she was just, like, listening to all these murder stories back to back to back, and they were making her just feel really awful about all these people who were getting murdered, but she also was really into that kind of, like, horrible, you know, sort of stories, like, oh, you know, she's into that, so she says that for a little while she actually tapered off and she quit watching them for a little while, and she's like, man, I'm way less stressed out lately. But now I think she's ramped back up into it. And she says, well, I powered through. Now I don't feel as much anxiety anymore. I'm getting used to the idea of people being murdered all the time. So yeah, she's really eager to get another personal time. She wants to see more Let's Plays and things like that. So right now she's out on the town with Miles. She's taking him shopping, and she tells me that if I want to do recording in the future, just let her know, and she'll do something similar. I don't know if I really do this to her every week. Certainly not for personal times. With the weekly personal time, I feel like I'd run out of things to talk to, and then would just start telling you about shows I watched. And I watched a lot of shows lately, let me tell you. Because I'm cooped up at home, I watch Miles most of the day, and whenever he eats, I'd put on a Netflix show and watch that, and if the Netflix show was good, then sometimes I would watch it, like he'd finish eating, and then I'd sit there and I'd hold him while we watched the show for a while, and this has led me, over the span of several months, to go through a lot of Netflix shows. Lots of Netflix originals, some good, some not so good. She-Ra was one of them, and like I say, I had kind of a funny take on She-Ra. And I was really disappointed that no one wants to have fun anymore, and everyone would rather talk politics. Because She-Ra struck me as interesting in the way that you could tell that they didn't have a very good budget, but they kind of worked with what they had. The way it came out most frequently was that they just didn't ever have, like, crowds, except for in one episode. But, like, they would go to a kingdom, they describe it as a kingdom, and it would be, like, 2 people. Or maybe 4 people. Like, the biggest kingdom had to have been the plant people kingdom, and that was like 10 people, and one of them was pregnant, so they were adding to their numbers. The only people there having heterosexual sex, I think, in the entire show. But all the same, yeah, it just kind of cracked me up the way that worked out. It just felt like so empty, and like the major population numbers were all princesses. So, yes, as far as developments with Miles go, though, he's eating solids now, and this is kind of fun. We get to see what kind of different flavors he reacts to and how he handles them. For the most part, he likes every kind of food, except for, I have discovered, onion sauce. Not a real big fan of onion sauce. Claudia won't let me give him ketchup. I don't know how he'll feel about ketchup. But sometimes I give him things he's not really supposed to have yet. Like, I'll just take a little drop of, like, some kind of condiment and just, like, put it in his mouth and see how he reacts. Onion sauce resulted in tears. He cried after I gave him onion sauce, so he's not a fan of onion sauce. I can't say that. That's the worst reaction he's had so far to anything that I've given him. He likes his bananas a lot. Bananas are one of his favorites, fairly typical for a kid. But he gets through a lot of other things. He likes peaches, pears. Apples were kind of sour, so that was sort of funny watching that reaction, being like, whoa, apples. Oh, I don't know about that. We're also the doctor recommended that we get these allergenic foods, because he said that apparently if you expose kids to allergens, they're less likely to develop allergies. So start feeding your kid allergenic foods. And who knows if that's true, but the doctor recommended it, so we'll give it a shot. And with these kinds of things, I feel like there's probably not a lot of really widespread study on, like, exposing kids to allergens and whether or not it's good for them, because people are pretty reluctant to experiment on babies. So, whatever. The real reason why I'm behind it is partly because we get to feed him some really interesting foods. Like, we've got these foods, these pureed foods that are like a mix of 2 things, and sometimes it sounds like 2 things that you wouldn't mix together, like eggs and pears. So apparently there's just like an egg mixed into this pear puree, and we just feed Miles this thing, and then we see if he has an allergic reaction. And generally speaking, the doctor did say that for parents that do this, he hasn't seen anything like anaphylactic shock or anything, because they put such low doses of these foods in there. But we've experimented with a bunch of different things now, and he's not allergic to peanuts, hazelnuts, eggs, and I think that's it. But he's coming up on, like, shrimp. Like, this is one of the really interesting things that I want to see is, like, shrimp. Shrimp mixed with, I don't know, like, apples or something. These are not foods that go together, but they just puree the stuff up, and then you feed it to him and you see what they do. And like I say, so far he's been okay. And if he never develops an allergy to shrimp, that'll be great for him, because I like shrimp, and I'll cook us shrimp in the future. He hasn't moved on to, like, actual solids, like not like cereals or anything yet. The doctor told us that they're ready for cereal when they have fine enough motor control to pick up a piece of cereal and put it in their mouth. And so what we've done is we've bought, like, some puff cereal things for kids. It's really the same as adult cereal, but they just dissolve really easily. And he's got this little car walker that he runs around in now. It's like a little hot rod. I thought it was really funny to put. It's like a black, you know, Shelby series type looking thing. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, though, we can take the front off of that. Like you take the hood off the car, and then it becomes like a shoot. What do you call? Like a plate? Not a plate. You know, a surface for food with a tray. It becomes a tray. And so what we'll do then is we'll like just put like a couple of puffs down on the tray and then see if he can get the puffs into his mouth. And if he can, then he's ready for them. And so far we're having a little bit of trouble, and it's kind of a crack up because we'll give him these puffs a little before he's due to eat to see, you know, how he does. And he can't get them into his mouth, but he can pick them up. So he'll like, you know, he'll grab them, you know, whole hand into fist, and they'll stick to his hand. So they don't come out, they're just stuck because they're a little bit sugary like that, I guess. And then he'll cry because he's hungry, you know, and it's not quite feeding time, but he is hungry, and we're taunting him with this food. And the answer to his salvation is right there in his palm, and if he could just get the palm to his face and swallow the food that was already being held in his hand, he would be self-sufficient. I wouldn't even have to feed him. I wouldn't have to hold the spoon or anything. I'd just give him a bunch of puffs, and he'd be good to go. But he's not at that level yet, so mostly the puffs just upset him until eventually he scrapes him off, and they fall on the floor, and the dog eats him up. So that's great. We got a dog, personal vacuum cleaner. Everyone says that's one of the great things about owning a pet when you have a baby, is that the pet takes care of some of the mess. So yeah, we're doing that, and that's been fun. He's not crawling or anything yet. He's at that stage, I think, where he might start crawling. But the doctor also told us that babies sometimes don't crawl. Apparently, sometimes they just go straight to walking. And what's interesting is that Miles hasn't seemed super interested in crawling yet, but he will stand. And so we've got this toy that we bought. And this is kind of funny. Claudia was like looking at these toys, and so she called me, and she's like, yeah, so I'm looking at these toys, and she's giving me these descriptions, and she's like, but I'm looking at this one, and it advertises really specifically how not annoying it is, and I'm pressing the buttons, and they're right, like, they're really not annoying. It plays, like, classical music and things. Like, do you think we want to get, like, the loud sirens that'll pull his attention more, or do you want to go with the non-annoying toy? And I was like, oh, definitely the non-annoying toy. I'm home all day. And Claudia was like, okay, I'm glad we're on the same page. And so she came home with this non-annoying toy that he can play with, and you put legs on it so that the kid can like stand and support themselves while banging away on this toy. You know, it plays music and, you know, tells him colors and things like that. And so he'll stand and he'll play with that now. And I almost wonder if he's going to be one of these babies that walks before, you know, never crawls. He just walks. You know, crawling is hard. Crawling is a lot of effort. You know, may as well just cut to the chase with all this. Why go through the middleman? Which cracks me up, because that means the old adage, you have to crawl before you walk, is absolutely false. You can start by walking. You don't have to crawl at all. You know, what the heck? So, yes, the other crack up about this thing is that Claudia and I have been careful not to buy any really obnoxious toys. We do pay attention to that. But her parents also buy us stuff, and so her mom and dad bought us this little, like, Mickey Mouse fire engine. And you know what it does? It plays a siren! You sit in it, you push the buttons, and it plays a siren, and, like, Mickey yells in his high-pitched voice, "Get the fire hose!" That's great, you know, that's gonna be wonderful. Noisy-ass toy that plays a sound that is intentionally meant to be annoying and noticeable to get cars out of your way. So real glad about that. I don't put him in it, really, but he has it. And more hilariously, he can walk around when he's in the walker. And so the fire engine has a handle, and it's got like skids on it, you know, like skis. I'm not sure what the deal is. I think it's a rocker normally. I think you might be able to like take the rocker part off, and then you can push it around with your feet. But anyway, though, it's got a handle on the end, and so what Miles will do is he'll grab the handle, and then he'll like walk all around the living room holding the handle of this like fire engine. So he still gets some use out of it. It's not like it's just gathering dust. It's just it's not being played with in the way that the manufacturer intended necessarily. But it's good for a laugh on my part, and you know, hey, that's good. At least I get some enjoyment out of the toy. So yeah. Yes, yes. What else is going on with Miles? I talked about how he's going... Oh yeah, I talked about he's sleeping more through the night. And this has been part of a real effort between Claudia and I. Her coworker, her boss, was recommending that we just let him start crying things out at night. Because if you pick them up or you comfort them whenever they cry, then they get used to expecting that comfort from you when you cry. So now when he wakes up to cry, what we'll do is we'll just let him cry, unless he needs to be fed. He does still eat at like 5 in the morning. But, we'll just let him cry, and then eventually he goes back to bed on his own. And we were really surprised. They told us, like, yeah, maybe like a day or two he'll do that, and he'll keep crying, but then once he realizes you're not coming, he'll learn to just go back to sleep. And it was true! We quit picking him up, we quit comforting him when he cried, and at this stage, he's old enough, I guess it was just like, oh, I guess they're not coming. And so now he tends not to wake up in the night. He still does occasionally, but for the most part, more often than not, it's getting to where he just sleeps until 5. So we put him to bed at 9, he wakes up at 5, he eats, and then he goes back to bed. So that's part of why I'm more alert and more awake. But the other part of that, though, is that to get him to sleep through the entire night, we have to kind of control his nap times a little bit more. In the past, what I was doing is whenever he got tired and he would rub his little eyes, I would just pick him up and put him in the crib, and we would kind of have these fights. Because if he was only a little tired, he might go to bed, or he might throw a temper tantrum, and you just kind of had to see how it panned out. But now, what I'm doing is I'm keeping him awake for a little bit longer, like, 2 hours past his usual nap time, and then he gets like a nap after that. But then this is kind of a struggle because he gets sleepy and then he gets really cranky and he's screaming at me. So we have this game that I play now. Claudia taught me this, and I didn't think I could do this until I saw her doing it, and then he had a lot of fun. Where she was throwing this little like rag over his face, and then he would pull the rag down, and then he'd laugh because it's a game. So she'd throw the rag back on his face. Then I escalated things, and so like he'll be in his little walker running around the house, and he'll start to cry. He'll come find me, and then yell at me, and so I'll throw like a whole blanket over him, not like an adult-sized blanket. I mean a child-sized blanket. And then he'll pull it off of himself, and he's still pretty uncoordinated, but he gets it down, then you're like, there he is, there's Mom, I found him, I found you, buddy. And so he has a good laugh about that. It's a game, we have a lot of fun. And I'll do that to keep him entertained for as long as I can until it doesn't work anymore. And then we just kind of have to fight through. And what's funny is that he now naps at like 1 o'clock. But by 12:30, if he's not being actively engaged with, he'll like just pass out. So if he's on like his play set, I've watched him now pass out on his play set, and another time he like passed out in his in his little car. Like it was just the passing out in the car was the one that happened today. Is he was throwing a tantrum. And so I kind of do this now. You can tell a little bit when it's a tantrum. So I was kind of like, all right, this is a tantrum. And if you ignore it, then he'll eventually tone it down. And he goes back. He fusses. He's got to fuss when he's tired and he's got tantrums. So I ignore the tantrum, and then when he's fussing, just sort of like, well, just hang in there. It'll be 30 more minutes. Just hang in there. Let's play a game. Let's play a game. If you're only fussy, we can play a game. But if you're throwing a tantrum, whatever. So he was throwing his tantrum, and then the tantrum stopped. And it was because he had just like slumped over his car and just fallen asleep with the wheel. So, this is a brand new thing. He previously always just got that nap at 11 o'clock and then again at like 1 o'clock. And now we're just doing the 1 o'clock nap. So adjusting these schedules, it's, the bright side is it's getting him to sleep for longer because he has fewer naps throughout the day, which means that he's more tired at night and he's sleeping like fully through the night. So some parents find this kind of stuff cruel, I guess, but we're totally getting what we want out of it, which is more rest. So, hey, what can I say? It worked for us. I don't know. One of the things about parenting that I guess we're both learning is that you kind of have to learn not to take things too seriously because, babies are driven to want to live, they're fragile and delicate and all this stuff, but as long as you keep some eye on them, for the most part, it's okay. I dread when he does start to run around. I'm really concerned about lots of things, but we'll get to that when we get to that. For now, it's not so bad. We're in kind of we get into a groove, and he'll throw us off that groove eventually. But for now, we're in kind of a groove, and I've been able to go back to work. Yes, let's see, so what else has gone on? We've had a couple of things go through. You know, it's been Christmas, there's been some birthdays going on. We had a birthday come up, and this was a real crack up as far as things with Miles go. Claudia got a picture of this even. But we all stood around in a circle with like a fire lit in the middle of the room, and Miles was sitting there in his high chair. And we were all singing Happy Birthday in that sort of, you know, doldrum kind of way, like no one really wants to sing, but we all do because we have to, because it's happy birthday to you. And so we all sound like miserable, but we're miserable in unison. And Miles he just like breaks down crying. Like, it's the most scary thing. Like, he's just like really concerned, and then he just starts to cry. And we were like, man, if you think about it, like if that was your first time ever seeing that and you didn't speak English to know that it was a birthday song, like, would that not be a little scary? So we're not really sure what exactly provoked him to cry about that, but we have our theories, and in any case, it was pretty funny. We wonder how he's gonna do on his first birthday. Hopefully we'll get a birthday song in there and everything will be okay. Yeah, so that was cute. That was fun. I guess in business news about the Patreon stuff as far as how things are going. I don't recall if I brought this up or not because, like I said, this is the second take on this video due to just I had an issue with the first take. Doesn't look like I have any issues yet on the second take. But anyway, though, Patreon, we had a bunch of people leave due to upset about political stuff. And I know I actually talked about this a lot in depth, and so I apologize if I'm repeating myself on this. But it was really kind of a surprise. A lot of the platforms, congressmen and people like political individuals from both over in Europe and in the US have been talking a lot about how all of the online platforms are really radicalizing people lately. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, they've been scrutinizing them, and Facebook has gotten it kind of the worst because Facebook was probably one of the more honest platforms. Twitter is smaller, so and they're mostly like dealing with sending small units of information. I suspect that YouTube is probably one of the worst, but when you look at the numbers that they were giving, like, I thought it was really funny because they were like, how many Russian accounts are operating on Facebook? And Facebook was like, oh, like 80,000, something like that. They would give these like numbers that seemed real. And then I remember seeing like the initial estimates from YouTube, and they were like, how many Russian accounts do you think are active on YouTube? And YouTube was like, I don't know, like 2. and it was just a crack up because it was like 2. Are you kidding? Like, it was some number that you could count on your appendages. Like, you know, it was like between 1 and 20, I think. And so they were like, I don't know, like 2. Like, I'm pretty sure we're not being exploited. And so YouTube was just a crack up with all this stuff. But they started coming down. All the platforms have started coming down on, or at least for once, to save face and to placate the politicians. They came down on like Alex Jones and Milo Yiannopoulos and Sargon of Akkad and whatever. And I apologize if I brought this up in the video already. But it's, you know, it's notable, it's important, because if I didn't already say this, the thing that struck me as weird is a lot of people started leaving Patreon because Patreon also blocked Milo Yiannopoulos and Sargon, whatever, from operating on their website. And so people said, like, well, I can't support a platform that doesn't allow free speech, and they started leaving. And they left my Patreon, you know, they left leaving notes saying, like, this is why I'm going, this is where I'm going, and they left me notes saying, hey, Greg, like, if you want my support, then you should use another program, you know, that'll set me up, that'll let me donate to you this way. And it's one of those things is the market doesn't really work that way. These sites all have network utility. You know, nobody's on YouTube anymore because we like YouTube. YouTube has gotten to be a really crappy platform. Everyone's on YouTube because it has the most network utility. That is to say, most people are on YouTube. And because you need an audience, if you want to, you know, if you want to do a show, then you go to YouTube because that's where the audience is. You know, people use Patreon because everyone's familiar with Patreon. It's where people go. It's where they're familiar with. So Patreon has this network utility. You can't just, like, boycott Patreon and then go over to another, like, competing Patreon service because nothing else has the same network utility as Patreon. It's just like with YouTube. A lot of people are mad at YouTube, but no one can leave it because every other website does not have the same network utility. you're kind of locked in. It's a sort of soft market monopoly. It's what they might call a non-coercive market monopoly, which is where technically you have alternatives, but in practical terms, there's no choice. You just have to use this one service. So as far as doing what Patreon does, there's nobody else. It's just Patreon. And so there's really not another service that conveniently does that, that's reliable and that people know about. So, it wasn't like I was going to go set up a totally new account on some like fledgling service that's eventually going to close down when it runs out of investor money or whatever. Because that's what happens to a lot of the alternate services. They never develop the network, and people say like, well, it's because you're not trying, and it's kind of like, well, no, because it's a saturated market. You see, people are already using these platforms. The market's already saturated. Everyone is already using YouTube, and so they don't really have a lot of desire to use a different program that offers less of the same thing. There's not really an opportunity to break into a saturated market. So it's not anyone's fault that we're on Patreon. It's just the way it is. But it really killed me that people were leaving Patreon over this political stuff, because a lot of guys like Sargon of Akkad and whatever, these are not people who are like informed. They're not experts. They're not really producing things that are high value. These aren't like artists or whatever. Spouting your opinions on politics or on current events is so easy. Anyone can do it. Like children could do it. And even though they may have banned Sargon and a lot of these other guys, I guarantee you that YouTube is still completely... There's probably thousands of other people who are providing exactly the same kinds of opinions, exactly the same kind of content, who are just as informed. And the only difference is they have less name recognition. So it's like we lose these channels that are just pundits. But it's not really losing anything. I mean, you could say like you're losing the personalities, I guess. But honestly, these guys were kind of like rabble-rousers. They were sort of mean-spirited personalities. And so it's really hard to feel sorry for them. And, it's... Like I said, I was just surprised to see as much support for these guys as I did, and to see as many people leaving the Patreon as did. It was a big wave of losses. So, yes, as far as things goes, as far as the finances go, again, I apologize if I already brought this up, but I did in the last video, and that was a while ago now, so anyway, though, the Patreon income is no longer sustainable independently. Like, as far as if I were living by myself, I couldn't live on what the Patreon makes. But sending Miles to daycare would also cost a lot of money. So as it is, I'm still at a point where it's better to stay home and work on my internet stuff than it is to get another job and then send Miles to daycare, because the second job would bring in more money, but then most of that money would just go towards daycare. So what the heck, why bother? Like I say, Patreon doesn't really pay the bills in total anymore, but it's better to... effectively, this is worth a lot more, because if you look at like daycare is like, I don't know, $300 a week or something like that. So if you think about it, as long as I make enough to justify, like if I just had $300 a week, let's just say that's just money we wouldn't have had. So as long as it kind of gets justified, then I can still stay home and make stuff and work on things. Mainly, I'm going to be focused on the comics. That's going to be the big thing that I want to work on, because the comics are a less hostile environment. It's less oversaturated. On YouTube, I'm competing a lot with people who, again, they're not really like producing anything. They're kind of just doing daily content. It's really easy. It's really easy to overwhelm audiences with it. And YouTube really wants this. And also, this is kind of a crack up. I feel like YouTube has actually been reducing the file size. I don't know if this is... I know they did once. I don't know if they reduced it again. But at some point, they reduced the file size for the thumbnails. Like, I'm not allowed to upload more than 2 megabytes or something like that of file size for a thumbnail anymore. And I used to just do, like, full-size PNGs, whatever. I didn't care. But they reduced that. So it kind of cracks me up, because on the one hand, they're like, upload as much crap as possible. It's all got to be video. And the visuals should be totally wasted, because it's all so fast and cheap. But also, don't waste our bandwidth with these giant PNG files. Like, shrink them down, make them JPEGs, okay? So it's kind of like they're I don't know, pinching pennies while they spend dollars. It's just stupid. It's like, if you guys want to save on bandwidth, try promoting things that take longer to make. You know, I don't know, something with any kind of value. Bring back animations. Bring back real film reviews instead of these dumb, you know, like snapshot opinion guys. You know, I've been catching up. I caught up a little bit on Half in the Bag for a while. Speaking of, I mean, that's kind of sad because I really like Red Letter Media's when they really break things down and do in-depth analysis. They're awesome. Half in the Bag is fun to listen to, but is like so much more dull than one of their proper reviews. It's just not as good. And man, you know, man, I don't know if YouTube's ever gonna be cool again. But I don't know. Anyway, as far as, let's see what else is going on. I'll try to make more video. I'll try to make more content. I'll keep working on Steeb and whatnot. As far as the money stuff, you know, I don't know. Some of it feels out of my control. The whole algorithm thing with YouTube is out of my control. The webcomics do grow as long as I post them regularly, we're finding. I mean, not at like an incredible pace, but, you know, Kit's getting pretty good viewership. It started off pretty weak, and it's been developing a viewership over time. So, if anything, there's evidence that you can grow. And I don't know if there's a point where it starts to grow exponentially or not. Probably not, but, hey, wouldn't that be nice? You know, and I'm getting better at my art and everything as I go along. So, yes, hopefully that covers everything that I wanted to say. Like I said, I did 2 videos, so I may have said some things, may have not covered some things, may have thought I already covered some things that I wanted to talk about, but I don't know. That's what's been going on in my life lately. I hope things are going good for you guys, you know, and if not, I hope things turn around and things look up. But, you know, regardless, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll catch you all next time.